with Michael Usher, and Associate Director for Undergraduate Admission at Loyola University Chicago. Loyola is one of my favorite places. It's a beautiful campus, has incredibly strong academic programs right in Chicago. And what comes to mind for me with Loyola is some of their amazing, first off, again, strong academics, really preparation and immersive, services in terms of preparing students for life after college and just having that career readiness as part of the curriculum, and then strong study abroad, and as well as just incredible student experience in general. So that's what comes to mind for me. Mike, please chime in if there's anything else that you'd like to highlight. But first and foremost, again, thank you for your willingness to do this.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's been great to know you over the past 7 or so years now. So it's awesome to get to talk to you and to see how things progress over at Oakton. I know you do a lot of really cool initiatives over there that is great for students, and all the different things that you have in place and things you're doing in the future. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And so with any listeners, as far as, again, this kind of podcast or this kind of session, this setup, we love to highlight, different resources as people are looking at college readiness and interested in exploring different colleges. And so it's a pleasure to be able to highlight Loyola and the work that's going on there. But as we know, in today's date, June 5th, for students that are looking at, fall admission or even further along into the spring of 2021, students right now, this is a very unsettling time, in the midst of a global crisis pandemic with COVID-19. And so there's a lot that's been kind of up in the air. And so my first question for you, just in light of that, of this climate and with prospective students, what should a prospective student know about Loyola right now in light of COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Brian. Thanks. Of course, we're getting it. A lot of those questions are coming out right now from students, parents, community college counselors like yourself, right? What is Loyola doing, and what is in place to make sure that students' health and safety are at the forefront of what we're thinking about. So Loyola University Chicago has been taking the llama approach. Might sound silly, but the llama approach, I think, is a really smart way to go about doing it. And what that actually stands for, Brian, is legally allowable and medically advisable, right? So that's the approach that we're taking as far as making decisions at the university. We want to make sure that, yes, it's definitely legally allowable. So as you mentioned, we operate here in Chicago. So we want to make sure that we're doing right by what the mayor has in place for us, as well as being in Illinois is what the governor has in place. So we are following those kind of two legally allowable guidelines. And then the most important, obviously, is medically advisable. The health and safety of our students is definitely at the forefront of our minds when we are making those decisions. It's a very high priority, of course, not only for faculty, but staff, students, parents, and the Loyola community, right? We have about 11,000 undergrad students in the Chicagoland, at our campuses. So we want to make sure that we're mindful of all of those different, kind of stakeholders. So what we've actually done is the university has over 265 faculty members across the university, kind of engaged in all of these different small groups, as well as different kind of working groups to figure out what do we need to do, right? There's a lot of fronts that we have to kind of be mindful of, is operations, facility, classrooms, academics, right? So I think the most powerful resource that Loyola has, or some might say it's the lakefront and all of those things, is definitely the people, right? So I think our university is the way it is because we have so many great people who are mindful and really care about the mission of the university and making sure that everything is taken into account. So I think within those working groups, they're being mindful and working diligently to make sure that we are looking at things through the lens of, is this legally allowable? Is it medically advisable? And how do we move forward? Things, you have to be kind of agile in these times to make sure that you are adaptable and that you can kind of pivot when you need to, because you never know, things might start looking great, right? We're on the rise as far as people recovering, and the cases might be down, but that's now. What happens when August rolls around or October? We want to be mindful of all those different scenarios. So I think we're doing a really good job as putting the people and the resources in the right place to start looking at all those options and modeling what that can look like. When it comes to information, I think we're doing a good job as far as informing students and the campus at large of what we are doing. So on our website, there is a COVID kind of news feed that is updated regularly with new things that are coming out, right? So things are, happening and moving daily, and we're doing a good job, in my opinion, as far as getting that information out there to people who need it. We want to continue to do that, and I think from my perspective, we are doing a good job looking at all the different scenarios, and again, really following the LAMA approach is legally allowable, medically advisable. And that's the kind of the focus that we're going to work towards throughout the fall semester and, of course, into years to come, because I think this will put on notice a lot of different things that might say, hey, this could happen again. How do we make sure that we are doing things right by our students, faculty, and staff, and our Chicago neighbors? So I think we're doing a good job there.
That's awesome. And those that don't work within higher education and in any capacity, I think sometimes are caught off guard by the number of acronyms that exist within
Sure.
within college and university. So I love the LAMA approach, and but I do think it's one of the more very clear-cut and straightforward kinds of approaches, which is always appreciated in times of crisis, right? Is that there is a set of priorities, and to make those clear, and which also I think, unless you're in higher education, is hard sometimes to grasp, like all the different moving pieces and the different stakeholders that are needing to really kind of come up with a plan. And that is hard, especially with a larger, again, prestigious university like Loyola, is how do you have those lines of communication, for sure.
Yeah, of course.
So, but speaking of which, I mean, with this approach, and again, it's summer now, like it's June 5th, and a lot of students are kind of navigating this gray area and trying to identify what is the appropriate approach in going towards the fall semester. How are things shaping up for the fall semester at Loyola? And the second part is, what gets you excited for this new academic year?
Yeah. So I'll take the first part. How are things shaping up? So currently, we do have two proposed scenarios that we're working with. The first scenario being a hybrid, both in person and on in person as well as online, right? And then the second being fully online. We're hoping, obviously, with the hybrid model to have students in the classroom and taking some of those classes online. But with that first approach, I think that's what the university wants. That's what we're gathering is what our students want for the majority, is that to do a hybrid model, I think it really comes down to de-densifying things, right? As I mentioned, right, we're not only looking at what Chicago has allowable, what the state has allowable, what is legally, medically advisable for us to do, is de-densifying things, right? Universities really weren't built to say, hey, you're only going to have about 10 students in this classroom, only a few students in this residence hall, and only 10 people in your sporting events, right? They just weren't built like that. So what we have to do is be mindful of how do we de-densify things to have a hybrid model where students get classroom exposure, but limit as far as if they don't need to be in the classroom, let's say for a lecture or for a discussion, let's put some of that stuff online. So I think with the hybrid model is the route that, of course, we would love to have for the fall semester, is to say, hey, as long as it's medically advisable, how do we do that? Majority of our classrooms were only 26 to begin with, but even that right now, they don't want gatherings of 26. So how do we get that number down to what is allowable? How do we maybe stagger classrooms so that students aren't, all rushing out of classrooms at the same time? So as you mentioned, there's a lot of stakeholders when it comes to making these decisions, and how do we go and adjust and pivot to make sure that we are being mindful of, social distancing, making sure that cleanliness is a top priority at the university. How do we do that? So it might look a little different, as a hybrid model. Schools had to went 100% online with our courses. So should we have to do, that second approach, I think we're ready to do it, right? So if we had to go fully online, we still want to be able to deliver a high quality education. So we are prepared to go fully online should we need to. Obviously, that isn't the approach we want. We are hoping to go that hybrid model, but we are definitely preparing for both. For students who might want fully online, again, we're looking at that. We're looking at all the different opportunities for students. And at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is to delivering a high quality education to our students, which we've been doing for 150 years. So I don't anticipate we would stop anytime soon to do that. And I think both of those scenarios, whether one is what we're going to go with, I think as soon as we can actually officially state, hey, this is what we're doing, those are the ones that we're proposing, and I'm sure that we would update everybody as soon as we have that information. And again, our website is doing a good job of constantly updating new things that are coming out.
So important is that, and that's the thing is, as far as trying to find out because it's so rapidly changing in terms of news that's out there and the state of things.
Sure.
But what's always encouraging, and I mentioned this in a tip before, is that the homepage of every single university, right up at the top, is updates about COVID-19 and the university response. But that's what you've described as kind of that is a lot of the approach is you're trying to prepare for the best, but also really be realistic about how are cases going down, or is it going up? And going back to that llama approach that you mentioned as far as what is advisable.
Sure.
And because as you also alluded to, the university structure in college is built on connection. And just as I think all students want to be back for the most part, as long as, again, considering their health, but colleges want students back.
And absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And I think that to answer the second part of your question, as far as what excites me about the fall, is students, right? So new students coming to to campus is always an exciting part. I think really having students be able to build community is so important, and that's what I really enjoy. So that's what excites me, is students given the opportunity to build community. I love when I hear about students, at Oakton, that they're building community and they're coming from all these different clubs and organizations, and they're like, hey, I was doing all of these cool things at Oakton. How do I continue to do that? So great. Now let's build a larger community once you're here at the university. And I think that's so important, is that those students, are looking for all of these different ways to connect, to learn, to engage. So that might look a little different this fall, depending on, what resources and things that we have. So I think that's what really excites me, is those students having the opportunity to, engage and connect. And, a lot of times you might have a student that wasn't that involved at a community college or at the university, but now they're saying, hey, this is a new opportunity for me, a new school year, a new school term for me. So maybe this is the time I actually want to, start building those connections. So that really excites me, for students to be able to do that and build community. Again, it might look a little different of how we do that, but I think there's a lot of people who are working tirelessly to make sure that we ensure those opportunities for students. Again, and that could look a little different, but we want to make sure that we provide those opportunities. Just as you mentioned at the beginning, right, is I think the most important thing for universities to kind of gauge of how successful we're doing is to look at our students once they graduate. It's like, who our students become is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of students kind of find that niche through going through, education, whether it be community college, university, and saying, hey, I'm interested in this. I'm passionate about this. I want to get involved. I want to, be a person for others. And I think that's what really excites me. And I know that we will work as hard as we can to make sure we still provide all of those opportunities moving forward.
That's beautiful. Yeah, keeping up with the strong quality of what a Loyola experience and credential can provide, and in the midst of any kind of circumstances, is that the why doesn't change, but sometimes the how can change as far as keeping that up. But
yeah, absolutely.
so I'm wondering, as you said, we've known each other for a while, and you do such a great job at Loyola, and as a higher education professional in general, for a student considering college right now, and maybe not just Loyola, but wearing just your general higher ed kind of hat,
Sure.
Which is coincidentally you're wearing a hat right now anyway, but wearing your higher ed hat. For a student considering college right now and in the midst of this climate and thinking fall semester, just in general, what would be your advice for that student?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When it comes to a student looking at universities and kind of, the next step when it comes to education, a lot of times, personally, I always tell students, you can't ask enough questions. So when students, I always hate when a student emails me with an apology to say, sorry, I have another question. There's nothing to be sorry about. Taking proactive approaches into your education and getting the answers you need to make an informed decision is critical, right? To making sure that you transfer seamlessly and transfer successfully. So I think that students need to ask as many questions as possible. With everything going on right now, things are changing daily. So for a student to say, I think I might have asked you this, but I don't know, let me know, right? So sometimes things are lost in email. So if a student's, we're going back and forth, having a dialogue via email, say, my approach is like, let's get on a phone call, a Zoom appointment. Let's have a real conversation of kind of what things look like, because sometimes students just want to be heard and want to know, here's my concerns, how do I address them? And sometimes, just a quick email about maybe I got the answer, or if they say okay as a response or thanks, I don't know if they really understood my answer. And I want to make sure that students are well informed when they make those decisions. So when you're looking, a lot of students will look at multiple universities and options. So I think it's important to ask as many, because we all operate differently. We all have different deadlines, different transfer credit policies, different resources for students. So if you feel like you don't have enough information, how can you make the best informed decision? So I think that's so important, to ask as many questions as you can, making sure that you reach out and to use the resources that are available to you. And if they're not, ask for them. Say, hey, there's not enough information on your website for me to understand what the program's about or my credits. Can you explain this to me or put me in contact with somebody who can? Right? I don't think it's ever a bad thing to ask a bunch of questions, and if you don't fully understand, to ask them again. And I think in our role as higher ed professionals, it's the most important thing we can do is equip students with the correct answer so that they can make the decision. I never want to tell a student, like, this is why we are the best school and this is going to be the best opportunity for you. It's like, that's for a student to decide. A lot of times, they have a lot of support around that. So a lot of times they're not the only one making the decision. They're talking to, individuals like yourself to say, hey, my community college counselor told me I should ask these things. Great. Awesome. Is there other parents or guardians that are also assisting you in that process, because they might be able to provide you with questions that you didn't think of, right? We get the basic ones all the time: transfer credit, scholarships. But again, that's kind of high level. Sometimes you can dig a little bit deeper, get a little bit more granular with your questions, because everybody's looking for a different opportunity and things. So I think personally, ask as many questions as you can, reach out to people like myself, and get those answers, and never feel pressured to say, well, I've been told I have to do this. it's these are all adults, so all the adults need to start taking ownership to say, no, me personally, I need to find this out for myself and not do what this person has told me to. And I think that that's going to be an important piece in the college search moving forward, and especially with what's happening right now. Hey, can I start in the spring? What does that look like? Ask me those questions. Don't feel like I'm going to be insulted to say, well, the student isn't that interested because they're talking about a later term or they're looking at other schools. No, we know you are. Like, you should be, right? You should be doing that. And I think that personally is going to be helpful for students, with what's going on.
That's so perfect, because it is what I've heard and what I've mentioned to students or people looking at college just in general is, that it should not be an isolated experience, and that there are resources and people like yourself that that are here for students. And at the end of the day, the student's educational journey is their educational journey, but where they can so often run into problems is when it's in this silo, and
Sure.
and that it shouldn't be isolated. It should be done in conjunction with other people that are invested in their educational success. So the questions, I couldn't agree more, and that's so perfect. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's an important piece. Also, don't have people write the emails for you. And I've had that. I'm like, this is definitely not the person I'm talking to, and I get that sometimes, but I'd say take an active approach and definitely reach out. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to help. Community college counselors and people across, different departments, clubs, organizations. I think that it's helpful. Ask questions, get answers, and then ask more questions if you don't have enough answers.
That's perfect. Well, I'll make sure, at the bottom of this video, I'll include some links to what you've mentioned to me before, as far as how to find out more information about Loyola.
Yeah.
And anything else you want to say about that, as far as where a student should go, as far as updates, where should they look on the website to find out more?
Yeah, for more information just on transferring, our website is luc.edu/transfer. A lot of helpful information there. If there's not enough information, I love the emails. That just tells me, hey, it's time to start updating your website and putting information there. Our just general website at luc.edu. The first, right underneath, when you go onto the homepage, you'll see the COVID update news feed. That's very helpful as well. And then our website, in my opinion, is pretty easy to navigate. But if you have any questions or need additional assistance about the transfer process, any of the transfer counselors, I'm happy to assist anybody that reaches out to us, setting up appointments, Zoom appointments, phone calls, whatever students need. But I'd say our home website would be a good spot, and I'll provide additional ones as see fit.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike, and be safe, and really appreciate your time today.
Yeah. Good talking to you, Brian, and hope to see you soon.
All right.